Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcasts and wherever you listen to podcasts. That way we can keep talking about what we love, and that's talking about Illumination Entertainment and animation in general. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And joining us this week, we've got Haley.
Hello.
And today's going to be a fun episode. We are going through the entire Despicable Me franchise. Now, before we start breaking up each individual film, I kind of want to ask the broad question of how did you get into this franchise? What was your first exposure? Haley, I'll start with you.
My first exposure was, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, I went to see Despicable Me. I think came out at the same time around Inception or something like Inception, where it was like a huge movie at the time. And I thought, well, nobody's going to be in this one, so I'm just going to go see it. That place was packed, so I was wrong. And also the movie turned out to be very, very good. So I had a really good time. Since then, my friend from college and I have seen the rest of the Despicable Me movies together, except for this most recent one. Damn it, COVID. But it's just kind of become a weird cornerstone of our friendship, watching these movies together. So I think we could say I'm a decently sized fan of these films. I am the rare person that enjoys Minions. I like Minions. I think they're very funny. They've kind of turned into something far beyond what they were supposed to in the pop culture world, but I like Minions. I like this series.
Yeah, the Minions, I get a kick out of them anytime they're on screen. Cameron, I'll go to you next. What was your first exposure to the franchise?
For me, it was right when I was getting into writing animation reviews. I was wanting to really just focus on the foreign and indie side of things. But to make sure people read my reviews, I had to make a rule of like, okay, I'll talk about DreamWorks and Blue Sky Studios and Illumination Entertainment, because my opinions on Disney films and Pixar films don't really differ that much. Then I was just kind of like, okay, so what's the read on these films? And it ran the gambit of people like them, they're fine, they're harmless, to a lot of the animation community and film fandom and among film bros that Illumination was everything wrong with cinema. And I was like, really? This franchise, the thing that is exactly wrong with cinema. Not everything else, it's this. So I sat down, watched the first movie, and I was just like, oh, that was pretty solid. So then I watched the second one, I watched the third one, and I've just been a more casual fan of Illumination Entertainment while having my criticisms with them, which y'all have heard on this podcast. I guess I would say, a pseudo defender of Illumination. I'm against the vitriol and hyperbolic nature that these films bring out in people. Like, really, people, there are much worse animated films out there. I get some of the more film politics side of things. I get that. But as the core that is a quote unquote everything that is wrong with the world, nah fam, it's not that.
I think there's a thing we can kind of establish from the beginning of this podcast, which is that the marketing for these movies is absolutely insufferable. So I get, in a sense, why people are very sick of, like, Minions, which are everywhere, legitimately everywhere. Like, I enjoy Minions. And when they were promoting the first Minions movie, I was like, this is a lot. Like, this is way too much going on for Minions. Like, I don't understand why there is a Minion on every goddamn street corner. I think a lot of the irritation with just the hyper commercialization of one aspect of this franchise plays into why people hate it so much. But there are decent movies beneath that. It's kind of one of the more incongruous matchings of marketing to what is the product actually is. in my opinion. Having just gotten out of Minions 2, Minions 2 has less minions in it than like Despicable Me 2 in some regards. It's like the minions are not the central players of any of these movies, and yet they are marketed as if every Despicable Me movie is 2.5 hours of little yellow guy speaking gibberish at you.
Right. No, I agree with that. They're marketing, like, it's a thing with Illumination in general. They market their films like 6 months ahead of the actual film release. And
in the case of the newest one, because it's been delayed like 3 different times, they've put out so many trailers.
This movie has been promoted openly for like 3 years. I'm not even kidding. Like, it was supposed to come out like summer 2020. I remember them teasing it in 2019. I don't remember if I saw a trailer in a theater or if they were starting to do print ads or what, but they started that in 2019. So this has been a 3-year journey to get to what kind of amounts to a deeply stupid movie.
I never actually saw the first 2 Despicable Me movies in theaters. In fact, the first one I watched was Despicable Me 2. I can't remember exactly where. It was at either one of my family's houses. We were just kind of putting something on a lazy Sunday, and I just found the movie just delightful. We'll get more into that later, but it wasn't until the first Minions prequel, that was 2015, I believe, that I really got invested in seeing all of Illumination's movies in theaters. The rest is just kind of history. Most of movies that like have come out since then, I have reviews out somewhere in the ether. But let's get started with, well, the one that started it all, Despicable Me.
So let's start a little with the background. Chris Meledandri was the president of Blue Sky Studios and 20th Century Fox Animation. And he left in 2007 and started his own company with the process and goal of making animated films for NBC Universal that did not break the $100 million budget. They would mostly go around a 65 to their most recent film, well, one of their most recent films, Sing 2, costing at $85 million, which is something that's kind of bled into what DreamWorks is doing right now, but that's a story for another time. When this first film came out, this was 2010. This came out the same year as like Tangled, Toy Story 3, How to Train Your Dragon, The Illusionist. It was a really stacked year, and it was unfortunately getting compared to DreamWorks' own Megamind. So with Despicable Me 1, what was it about this film that worked? Like, what was so unique and distinct about it compared to everything else that was coming out at the time? I want to start with Gru, our main character voiced by Steve Carell of, The Office fame and among other many things. He's a supervillain who wants to make it big, and by doing so, he wants to steal the moon. I think Gru has been the consistent through line of this whole franchise. Maybe we'll talk about how he's portrayed in Minions 2, and I'm curious to see what y'all think about him there. But for me, Gru has been one of the most likable new characters in animation to come out. Like, he's got a heart. He's a very likable individual, but he's also got a level of relatable pettiness with his villainy that I think anyone can relate to, especially with that first sequence where he sees that a kid dropped his ice cream on the ground. He makes a balloon animal for him and then pops it and then just pushes the kid away just out of spite. Or getting his coffee where he just freezes everyone and takes whatever that one person was ordering. So what are y'all's opinion about Gru? Let's start there.
Gru is a delightful, villainous, I use that term loosely, character. It is kind of funny how the first movie sets him up as like this villain who ultimately is kind of bad at his job. That just makes his journey all the more heartwarming when he finally meets his found family.
I think for Gru, I think the thing that's kind of essential to his character and why he's able to carry these movies as they progress and get progressively wackier and less grounded in reality. I'm not pretending Despicable Me is grounded in any sort of reality, but it's a lot more grounded than like 3 when we get there. Is that he's evil in a way that's not off-putting. Like a lot of times when we're reviewing anime, we get these guys that are supposed to be obvious villain protagonists, but they're doing stuff that's so grotesque and so gross in such a casual way that it's almost impossible to root for them. It helps that we establish Gru's evil is really just kind of aggravated pettiness most of the time. Aggravated pettiness and stealing from people who can afford to be stolen from. Like, part of what makes his goal of stealing the moon work in that regard is he seems to view it as something that nobody will miss, which backfires very, very badly on everyone. But it's all kind of filtered through this like fun house lens of like what a supervillain does. It's like a supervillain from an old Danger Mouse cartoon or a supervillain from a comic book. It's not real, you know? His world seems real, but the kinds of things he's doing are not realistic. They're not real. And the things he does that would resonate are the kinds of things we all have wanted to do when stuck in a long line to get ice cream or whatever, or when we're confronted with a sobbing kid that's just like the last straw of our day kind of a thing.
And just like dealing with neighbors, it's when Gru tells his neighbor that's like, hey, your dog is pooping on my yard. Can you tell him not to do that? And the neighbor's like, oh, sorry, Gru. You know how dogs are. They just go wherever they want. And then he goes, not unless they're dead. And he's like, I'm joking. Not really.
Yeah, it's like all the things you've wanted to say in those kinds of situations, but it never escalates to the point where you're like, oh my God, I don't think Gru should be around children or other people.
So basically Gru is us, but without a filter.
Yeah.
And his crimes at this point in the franchise were very small. They stole the New York Times Square Jumbotron. They stole the Eiffel Tower.
One from Vegas.
We stole the Empire State Building.
Also from Vegas.
Still impressive.
No. And he has a very quirky crew of henchmen and a right-hand man with Dr. Nefario, who's voiced by Russell Brand. And you would not know that it was Russell Brand playing the character. He actually is acting and is not just told, hey, be yourself.
For better or for worse.
That's kind of like consistent throughout the franchise, though. It seems like they get the big names, and I know that's always a point of contention in the animation community because there are, you know, professional voice actors that can do these jobs just as well. And a lot of them are losing jobs because people are just plugging celebrities into roles. But this series especially, with like a couple of exceptions, it always seems like they actually did cast the best and biggest name they could for each role, and and the people in these roles are actually acting. I'm jumping forward, like Minions is not a good movie, but Sandra Bullock's for some reason giving it her like 110%, you know.
Right.
Same with Carell, same with Brand, same with Jason Segel in this movie, who doesn't sound like him at all.
I was gonna say, like, I looked up the cast recently when I rewatched this movie, and I'm like, wait, that's Jason Segel? Sounds nothing like him. That is like the highest compliment I can give to a lot of these performances.
It is very interesting because, yeah, sometimes you can just hear an actor who has that one voice that they can never escape from, like Will Arnett as the evil bank manager. I do love how they just have a bank for supervillains, and it's just as predatory as a normal bank. Mm-hmm. And he's voiced by, like I said, Will Arnett. He's not going to escape that voice. But
it's pretty obvious, yeah.
But everyone else is really good. But we also have to talk about the most profitable, marketable aspect of Illumination. The one thing that they have used for every film. And if you're savvy, you can see them in other Universal productions like, what was that big action film from like 2017?
Mortal Engines?
Yeah, Mortal Engines, where they're just like, they used to celebrate these guys as gods, and they're just 2 minion statues.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. So with our first introduction to these little yellow, minions, what was your first take when you saw these individuals?
They're chaotic, and I love them. I love minions so much. This is speaking entirely divorced of the marketing and the evolution of the minion as kind of like the boomer meme and everything else surrounding like the cultural baggage of minions. The phrase "the cultural baggage of Minions" is something I never thought I was going to say in my life, but here we are. So separate of all that, the Minions as they function in this franchise are basically as chaotic little monsters who have no idea what they're doing at any given point in time, but are just trying so hard to do it. They're really trying their best. And it's extremely funny to me in that regard. I think part of what makes the Minions work is that there's consistently like 4 or 5 named Minions that we're aware of through the entire franchise. Like we have Bob and Stuart and Kevin, who are like the main 3. We've got Dave. Dave has been shafted in the later movies. Justice for Dave. We have Mel in the 3rd one. There's a couple other named Minions, but we have some named ones that we can project more personality onto. Like Bob is kind of, I guess, the closest thing to a Minion child we have. Kevin is actually somewhat intelligent, but somewhat intelligent for a Minion is, the bars at the floor. And Stuart is a chaotic Lothario almost. Some more personality traits for like the named ones, but as a whole, the Minions all kind of behave in different versions of chaos. Like, I think that works really well because they feel like more than a faceless mass. Illumination does a good job of differentiating, like, when all the Minions are working on one project to have one singular goal versus when we split up the Minions and they're going to big box stores trying to find a unicorn toy and just getting really, really lost in the weeds on that one. So I think obviously this works better in some of the films as compared to others. Like 3, the Minions have almost no bearing on the plot. And to me, that's like their weakest non-Minion franchise outing. It's sometimes hard to like say, does this movie need more Minions? I don't know. I don't think anything needs more Minions at this point. But like, I think overall, the general concept they have for them, which is thing we add to scenes to make stuff just go exponentially wrong. And it's clear that they use the Minions to also show off some of the more like kinetic or impressive action sequences they've got going, because especially in 2, when you're seeing all these little purple Minions turn into yellow Minions just like in certain spots, and they're being flung at each other and being shot and being all over the place, it allows for some really impressive animation technique for sure.
Right. They're really pretty much like a new incarnation or a new kind of subspecies of like Looney Tunes antics. Yeah, that's exactly what they bring. They'll do like a little joke here and there to help give a laugh, like when they're getting like anxious and excited to steal the moon. One of them has like a rocket launcher, and then Gru is just like, no, calm down, and then the rocket launches anyway. And they're just
that's like, my man Dave. It's my man Dave.
Yeah. And they're like, Dave, come on now.
Dave.
Yeah. Which is interesting because the Minions, like at least in the first film, only had 2 voice actors. They had Chris Renaud and Pierre Colfin. But then you got like Jermaine Clements, who's Jerry the Minion, the one who goes like, "What?"
This is like learning that Ben Schwartz voiced BB-8. It's like, why did you do this?
I know you can.
Why is this something that was done? Did you just like pop in one day and they're like, "Hey, you got a great Minion voice"?
It's very interesting, and of course, with everything here, Gru is, of course, not succeeding at getting what he needs to steal the moon, which is a shrink ray that he realizes was stolen by a villain named Vector, who's voiced by Jason Segel. And of course, Vector is very aware of what Gru is trying to do and keeps him at bay. And then Gru sees 3 little girls, Margot, Edith, and Agnes, who are voiced by Miranda Cosgrove, Dana Gayer, and Elsie Fisher. This is something that I think is very interesting because like they're meant to be the heart to Gru's entire story arc through these 3 films. How do we feel about them as of this point with the first film?
The first film is where they get the most mileage as far as like their direct involvement in the main plot versus 3 where they get the least mileage. But in this first film, they are directly connected to Gru's character arc and how he turns from a villain to kinda sorta in this world a hero.
He's an anti-hero because he's still willing to cause some chaos throughout the film, but I think they are good for what goal is set out to do for Gru and his arc throughout these films. And I like their personalities. They're easily identifiable. You got Agnes, who's the cute one, Edith, who's the self-destructive one, and Margot, who's meant to be the level-headed kind of voice of reason among everyone. Yeah, it takes a definite like, oh, Gru is going to slowly fall for these girls and become their father and such. It doesn't really happen until he goes to the carnival, which I think has some of the best gags of the first film, especially when they have to deal with a crooked carny who's voiced by Jack McBrayer.
Talk about someone who can't disguise their voice.
Yeah, exactly. He's in two small roles. He's the carnival barker and then he's the tourist dad. And you can't tell the difference between the performances. And I do like that gag where Gru is just kind of like, listen, I'm evil, but this is messed up. So I'm going to take a shot at this alien shooting game. And he basically blows up the whole thing. The first film is the one that I think has a lot of heart. Its animation is definitely starting to show.
Yeah.
The low quality textures. And I know this was like back then when they were using a smaller budget and just trying things out.
This was like their first thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, this was before, God, whatever that terrible half live action bunny thing was.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
No, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, no. And I still think it looks good. They're still working things out with how they're crafting their human designs. And yeah, some of them don't look as good from the beginning. Like I think Mr. Perkins, the bank owner, is fine. Kind of an ugly design. But everything else looks pretty good. There's always this thing that a lot of productions have to worry about is when you draw the 2D art, how well is it going to translate to 3D? Because that's what they're doing these days. They're starting with 2D concept art and then, of course, going to 3D with the CGI and what have you. I don't like all the designs. I mean, I think Gru is really well designed. Very simple, straightforward visual look. Vector doesn't have my favorite design, but I get why he looks like that. He's of course, as we find out, the nepotistic son of the bank owner. He's a man-child.
He has a strong Mandark vibe. Strong Mandark.
I was definitely getting Mandark vibes from him.
Grown-up Mandark.
Something that this film also does very well, it has some really dark comedy at points. Like this whole franchise is known for having, one, a body count, and two, very like silly, but there's like a dark undertone to the gags that they do. Like Dr. Nefario shows Gru the gravity potion, and that minion just flies into space, doesn't come back. You even see him at the end of the dance sequence at the movie, of the first
That
movie.
minion is dead.
Yeah. And Gru just ask him, just like, so when does it wear off? And Nefario's just like, no idea. And yes, the first movie plays out as you would expect. Gru is starting to bond with the girls. And then something happens where they have to be separated in the third act. Of course, they get back together in the end and save the day. And something happens where Gru realizes that the girls were very important to him, more than he realizes. But for our first film, it's really solid. Do I like it more than Megamind or something akin to that? No, it's in the top 10 animated films of 2010. Yeah, for our first outing, it's still very impressive.
I genuinely think this is better than Tangled.
Ooh,
I do not.
That is a hot take.
My other hot take, I don't like Tangled. But I think one thing that does carry this movie through a lot, even now as you're looking at it and realizing that some of the technology, the scenes are starting to show, is that it has a really strong sense of style to it. Like, I know now we are very used to what Illumination products look like, and obviously other things have come out that have been aping that style. But at the time, there wasn't really anything that looked like this. Like, you compare this to the movies that you had mentioned of coming out in this very strong 2010 year. There's a lot of very like impressionistic influences, especially on Gru's design, like very simple silhouettes, but that are still very like movable and malleable. A lot of Looney Tunes style stuff going on. Not really things that we were seeing a whole lot of in these kinds of productions. Like DreamWorks to a degree, but DreamWorks, it's different from the DreamWorks house style too. So it really was like, whoa, what is this thing? It's very eye-catching, especially things like Gru and the Minions. Like, the girls, they're cute. You look at like these ridiculously almost over-designed characters in some regards, but they're still very simple to get down. They're very memorable. They're not super cluttered. So it was very eye-catching at the time. I remember that. Also, I think the music in this is better than the music in Tangled. That's another hot take, I know, but God, I hate that Tangled soundtrack. It's awful. One good song in it. I think Pharrell's contributions to this franchise can't understate it either. Like, the music is a whole vibe. The first movie doesn't have Happy in it, which, destroyed the world for about 6 months in 2013.
Right.
But it has an actual Despicable Me theme, which has just really lovely, like dark, ominous kind of 70s spy tones to it. And the score in general works very well.
The theme that plays when Gru is gallivanting around doing his petty deeds.
I'm having a real bad day.
Yeah. Oh, Despicable Me. I love that. That's a great little tune. There's a lot of important aspects to this. And yeah, I agree. I think the visual look is very important to Illumination because at this time, people were still, even 10 years to the T of CGI animation overtaking 2D animation, at least in the US, we were still trying to figure out how to do cartoony, how to do exaggerated looks before films like Hotel Transylvania came in and said, like, hey, here's how you can do it. And it's like, whoa, okay. Some elements might not hold up, but come on. There's a scene where Gru just waltzes into Vector's face and just punches a shark. You can't hate that.
It's not.
It's a rule. It's a fact. So 3 years later. So between this, like Illumination tried to have a bunch of different films. They had Hop, which did poorly. Yeah, it's awful. It's easily one of their worst movies.
It's the only movie in their catalog that wasn't animated in-house. So that's why it looks very different.
It's got a real Smurfs vibe to it. And Smurfs is not good, but it's not as bad as Hop.
Hops was like the concentrated element of like why everyone does not like those live action animation hybrid films like Smurfs, Yogi Bear. We were going through a lot of those during the late 2000s and early 2010s.
Why does James Marsden always find himself in these movies? He's in like all of them.
Yeah.
The Sonic one, this one. He's not in the Smurfs, I don't think.
No, that's Neil Patrick Harris.
He's Enchanted. He's in another one and I'm not remembering, but he's in a lot of these.
I know, and it's like, come on, man, he's a good actor.
There's got to be something better for him. There's got to be somebody asking him for different roles. There has to be.
Right, exactly. And then we go into 2012, and that's when they released The Lorax, which it's not the worst movie from 2012, but on a moral level, I just do not like it.
The term you're looking for is tone deaf.
It's tone deaf, but it has the one slur. So It is morally bankrupt. No, I'm kidding. This did create maybe not entirely, but hugely important to the cultural legacy of the Tumblr sexy man, which I want to talk about very extensively when we get to Minions, because I have thoughts.
Yeah. Because speaking of, we got to talk about 2013. Not a big or strong year for American animation. I mean, yes, it was the year of Frozen and Monsters University, which caused Pixar to take a break for what seemed like forever. We had The Croods, we had Turbo, we had Planes, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. A lot of those.
This is a bad year.
Yeah, well, the second one.
I like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, but that's a lot of like B-list stuff going on.
Yeah, Epic, and then some of the lower ranked ones like Escape from Planet Earth and Freebirds. But luckily it was all saved because the foreign animation scene was great with stuff like The Rabbi's Cat, the English release of Colorful, Approved for Adoption, Wrinkles, A Letter to Momo, The Wind Rises, Wolf Children, and one of my favorite films and the first film I ever reviewed, Ernest and Celestine. So it wasn't really hard for Illumination to stand out with Despicable Me 2. And it's interesting that they go right back to making a sequel, kind of like how Pixar went from like Toy Story and then they went with A Bug's Life. And I still like A Bug's Life, but obviously something was going on with Pixar and Disney. So they went back with making a sequel to Toy Story. And with Despicable Me 2, Gru, now a happy family man with his 3 daughters, gets wrapped up in a spy thriller conspiracy of epic proportions and has to deal with the social dynamic and dilemma of dating. Ooh, scary. This one is a massive improvement from the first one, not only with the tech and animation that they used, like it was a improvement and a step up when they did the Lorax, but from Despicable Me 1 and Despicable Me 2, Despicable Me 2 still looks great.
It is almost a night and day difference. Like you still have the basic character designs, but as far as like the actual motion, the speed and the timing of all these set pieces, yeah, there is a noticeable difference.
Yeah, and there's a huge leap in the kind of stuff they're attempting, especially in the slapstick.
It's an improvement on every regards. Like the slapstick is a lot more like, well, snappy, and the humor is like an upgrade to it. Like a lot of things upgrade, including with the cast, because we are now introduced to Lucy Wilde, who's voiced by Kristen Wiig, who did have a small part in the first film as the orphanage owner, but now returns full-time as a returning and main cast member of The Crew. What do we think about Lucy Wilde?
I want to get this out of the way before I talk about how I feel about Lucy. I really don't like the tone this movie has in terms of its main plot, which is that the kids who were totally overjoyed to be adopted by Gru in the first movie, super in love with him by the end and what he does, big happy family, suddenly like seems like this is like supposed to be like in 6 months after the first one or whatever. They've made this pivot where it's like our lives are empty without a mother. It's like, first of all, there's plenty of single dads doing this out here just fine. Fuck you, kids. Secondly, like it just seems to go against everything that the first movie set up, where it's like Gru is a good father and he found what he needed, and the girls were suspicious of him, but they found what they needed. But it seems like when we start the second movie, they've forgotten what they've found in each other and feel like they're like, we need this other person in our lives. And I just don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like the messaging of it. I don't like the way it kind of comes off as like, well, Gru's not enough, even though he straight up like threw the moon back in the sky for them. Like, I don't think you can get more proving your worth as a parent than everything he did in the first movie to save his children from a crazy person and fix the earth.
Well, to be fair, Gru did say he did not steal the moon. And even if he did, he put it back.
That's what I mean. Like, he put the moon back for the kids. Like, he went so above and beyond. And also, like, I don't understand why those kids need a mother anyway. They have, like, all of the goddamn minions. Wouldn't leave them to babysit my children, but it seems like there's enough people to go around and help with this situation.
This movie has a really weird issue with single people. Like,
and it's not an issue that's repeated in any of the other movies in this franchise, which makes it seem especially weird. Like, just really weird.
Like, within the first, like, few minutes, like, after Gru saves the party because he was supposed to get a fairy princess, and then he plays it with that great line when someone asks, it's like, why is the fairy princess big? It's like, well, my house is made of candy, and sometimes I eat to solve my problems instead of confronting them. Which
that line is perfect.
I love Gru as the fairy princess. At some point, he shoots somebody with like a hose too, and it's fantastic.
He does that when a neighbor, Jillian, voiced by Nassim Pedrad, comes in and says like, "Hey, I have this single friend," and she's trying to be like a matchmaker for Gru, and then Gru just shoots her with a hose, and then he's just like, "Oh, sorry, I did not see you there," and then sprays her again, or there, just walks away with a delightful smug.
Yeah, like. This is a very roundabout way of saying I like Lucy as a character. I just hate the way she's been shoved into this. Like, this could have been fine without all of the hand-wringing about, like, oh, the kids need a mother and I'm single, even though she showed no inclination towards dating in the first movie. And honestly, since they're kind of odd as a couple.
Right.
The characters have good chemistry, but these are not people that I'm sitting here going, oh yeah, they're married. They just seem like friends. Like, it's just a very strange scenario to get this objectively cool character into this movie. Like, she's very fun. She's ditzy, but focused when the time calls for it. She lives up to being kind of like that junior member who's got too much confidence in herself, unearned confidence. But she's a lot of fun. She has good chemistry with the kids too. Something that is shown up a lot better in the third movie, I think, than this one. Man, I just keep thinking about like that scene where the youngest one's Agnes, right? Where Agnes is like, I have to read this poem about mommies and I don't know what to do. And it's like, just tell them you're not gonna read it, I guess. Like, it's just like, it just seems like Agnes is like the most manipulative character in this movie. And I know that's not fair to say about a 5-year-old. I mean, manipulative in the sense of the movie manipulating me. And it's just like, God, you're making me hate a toddler. Like this character is very cute, but it's just like, God, the saturiness, and you're trying to be like, I have a perfect family now at the end. It's like, oh my God, but you had one before.
No, she is the foil to Gru at multiple points in this movie, especially when he's trying to like delete the dating profile and Jillian comes back with another woman, Shannon, who's voiced by Kristen Shaw. And then like Gru is just like, oh, then he does a little finger gun thing to his head, which that was delightful. I love that little detail that they put in. He's just like, tells Agnes, like, tell her I'm not here. And she says, like, he told me he's not here. And of course, like when she's like, yeah, I got to read this poem. And he's like, oh, all right, let's do it. And then she's like robotic all the way through. Yeah,
I think she should have just read it like that.
Oh yeah, that would have been hilarious. Everybody just looking at like befuddlement. Yeah, I like Lucy Wilde as a character. I think how she's introduced is a lot of fun, where she one-ups Gru and being like, you shouldn't announce what gadgets you're using. For example, she just tases him.
Lipstick taser.
Oh, I love that little gag. And then she gets a little more hyperactive as the, kind of ditzy throughout the film. I think I liked her more when she had that more controlled chaos about her than when she was like kind of awkward and fumbling around a little. But I do like her character. Ashamed she becomes the damsel in distress at the end to a degree. But I like her because it seems kind of hard these days to balance out a great female lead character. And she's definitely one of the more entertaining.
It helps that Kristen Wiig gives just a completely like unhinged performance. I think this might actually be one of her better roles too. I'm not sure how much is her and how much is the writing, but whatever it was, that combination just works perfectly. And we kind of talked about this before when talking about the first movie, but Illumination does this thing where, they have the celebrities in these roles, but they're leaning into the characters like as much as they can. And Lucy in particular, she's like this really cool super spy, but she's also as chaotic as Kristen Wiig can be in real life. It's the kind of chaos that kind of works perfectly with Gru, despite what Haley said, the contrivances to get them together as like a romantic pair.
And she kind of comes off like her character from Bridesmaid, which came out like I think 2 years before this film came out. I think it was like 2011 or something. Yep. They also expand on the world a little more. We got the Anti-Villain League, which is of course, secret organization run by Silas Ramsbottom, who's voiced by Steve Coogan. And he is the one who hires Gru to help these heists that are going on that are being pulled by this film's villain, El Macho, voiced by Benjamin Bratt. I don't hate Vector. I mean, he does what he does perfectly. I think I like the more cartoonishly macho approach to El Macho. Like in and out of like the supervillain thing. I love how he comes into the cupcake store and then he's just like, we're having a new opening here. And I want 200 of your best cupcakes. Like he's talking to a small dog. The introduction of when like Gru is telling his backstory where he pours a shot, picks up a rattlesnake, sprays the venom like it's a seltzer water, and then eats the whole thing, and then stops a whole bank truck with his bare hands is great. I like El Macho.
El Macho, I think, is my favorite villain of the entire franchise, particularly for one scene, and it's his elaborate fake death.
Riding a shark with 20 pounds of dynamite
into an active volcano.
Benjamin Bratt is also clearly having a lot of fun doing this. The first movie's really good. There's more of an air of fun to the second one. Like, we've got Happy going on in the background. There's a lot of kind of interconnected plot points about just how much dating sucks. And while, again, I'm not into the contrivances that have worked this into the movie, There's some really fun scenes with it for sure. Like just everything they subject poor Shannon's body to is really funny in a really dark way. But also like I love the whole us seeing Margot in a relationship in the background of this entire movie and then it falling apart because the guy left her for someone with shinier hair or something. Because, you know, that's how it goes when you're 14.
Like, as much as I do like this, the setup for this movie definitely has a very sequelitis kind of feel. It's like Gru gets a girlfriend and then he becomes the overprotective dad to Margot. Even though I think Margot's interactions with Antonio, who we find out is El Macho's son, is a lot of fun. I love the dance sequence at the quinceañera or the party thing. And Gru comes like in and out of the scene of the shot when the lights go off.
Yes, and the guacamole hat.
Oh gosh.
The guacamole hat might be my favorite joke in the entire damn series.
It's certainly up there.
The best joke in the whole series is also in this movie, though. It's when Gru is on the phone, and I can't remember what happens, but then the minions burst in with their ambulance, and they're going, Beto! And they've got the fire extinguisher, and everything goes off the rails for like a minute while the minions just kind of explode this room. Then just goes back to the plot like nothing happened. Like, I just love that entire sequence of the minions trying to, like, actually put out a fire and fail.
Yeah,
speaking of the minions, eventually we have to talk about Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, purple minions as a result of the main threat of this movie.
No, that scene was delightful. And yeah, the whole thing is kicked off because El Macho stole this chemical that turns cute, harmless things into monsters, which we get these very silly but still kind of scary things going on with the minions, where they turn purple, get the big poofy hair, and then Mike, what sound do they make? Bah! That scene where El Macho is showing the effects with the minion and how he eats the axe, gets a car dropped on him, and just eats it like he's stucking down a candy bar. A lot of great visual gags throughout this whole film. And it's also might be the first time we see the minions as LGBT icons, ? Because this is when they start building up on their individual personalities and just the visual gags. Well, some of them are gags, but like you see one in like one of those French maid outfits. Like the minions are very much don't set themselves into like one role or another.
Yeah, there's in the first movie, I think it's the first movie, you can see two minions making out in the background somewhere, but this is the one where we've got habitually cross-dressing minions who are way up in each other's personal spaces. Yes, minions are queer icons. I'm going to say that. Someone's going to be very upset that I said that. They are the exact personification of like the ideal chaotic bisexual. Like they're blowing shit up. They're incapable of doing anything correctly, but they're also making out with each other and just doing straight up nonsense. So, you know, real queer vibes we got going here.
Now, what did y'all think about Dr. Nefario? Like, because he plays a sort of major part. He gets kind of sidelined a little in this one. He doesn't like that Gru's turning away from villainy, so he takes up employment with another villain, which we find out is El Macho. Something that I'm starting to see with a lot of Illumination films, now that I've like basically seen all that they've made. They like to start conflicts and plots, but then they like to just end them very abruptly.
I definitely felt that what you said about there being like a very deflated conflict when Dr. Nefario at the end is like, I don't like not being evil, but that's my family. And then he just kind of stops being evil.
I was just saying, there's too many plots in this movie. Like, both 2 and 3 have this problem, but 2, I think Nefario could have just stayed with Gru the whole time and affected absolutely nothing in the plot. I think same with a degree to having Lucy be fired from the anti-villain league. It doesn't really do anything in the end. It just seems like plot beats they've thrown in because they feel like it's like when screenwriters think they have to over-explain why things are happening, and sometimes it's like, no, we can go from A to B, like Nefario's doing something else. Or maybe the plot the whole time is Nefario's just not sure if he wants to hang out with Gru anymore. He doesn't have to actually leave to have that beat land at the end. The third movie has this problem on a way larger scale, but the second one feels overstuffed. The whole sequence in the toupee shop like could be cut from this movie and you wouldn't lose anything from it. Like
Yeah,
Ken Jeong, this Ken Jeong stuff, you know.
yeah. No,
If
I
you
like
like
Ken
that, he's got
Jeong.
a Netflix special.
I like Ken Jeong, but his character was definitely like the red herring of the whole film. He was just there to have a misdirection, but that's
Yeah.
it.
And for a movie that's already kind of overstuffed, it didn't really need that. Like,
No.
it's pretty obvious the central conflict is this person El Macho? That is a conflict that could sustain that whole movie and basically done.
I will say though, the third act where they start shooting the jams and jellies that Gru was trying and failing to make throughout the whole movie, take that part out that it's jelly. In the third act, it's violent as hell. And I think they got away with it because
it was jelly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it just Gru, like at the very end, Gru just doesn't look at the last minion. It just shoots him with the jelly and it cures him. But it's also like, this would be a way different kind of movie. It's like those YouTube videos of people being like, let's make this non-violent thing violent.
These movies do a good job of like, if you stop to think about some of the circumstances in some of these movies, you're just like, holy shit. Like, this is catastrophic. Like, 2 is where it begins. I think Minions and 3 have it the worst. The first Minions and 3 have that problem the worst. Like, 3, I don't see how anybody in Hollywood survived that. Like, I'm just going to throw that out there before we get there. But 2 is like, God, if this is like a Matrix level shootout going on here.
I don't quite get the whole dancing gag when the lipstick taser hits, but overall, I do like the humor pretty much, and especially the dark jokes with this one more than the first one. But yeah, speaking of the first Minions, we moved to 2015. This was a more lighter year for animation, not a super strong one in some regards. I mean, this is when we got that SpongeBob movies, Sponge Out of Water, The Good Dinosaur, DreamWorks' Home, Hotel Transylvania 2,
Inside Out,
Strange Magic, and then, of course, the Shaun the Sheep movie, and then the Peanuts movie, Anomalisa, when Marnie was there, The Prophet, and Boy in the World. Minions was the first spin-off film of the franchise. And before we talk about like just getting into it, were y'all a little worried or curious about how they were going to make this work? Because the Minions were at this point worked as side gags and little plot points to help move the story along.
I was going to say, so I would argue that the Minions movie does not work. So they didn't succeed. But yeah, it seemed like a bad idea from Jump Street to me. Like, there's the Minion language that I was like, this is going to get grating if this is an hour and a half of just this. And you can tell from the movie that they adjusted Minionese to have more actual identifiable words in it. Like, you can tell it's way less gibberish than the first 2 movies. But these are reactive characters. They're not usually proactive characters. So they also had to make them proactive characters. It was a lot of plate spinning to do to get a movie that didn't really need to exist.
I think this was the first time the Despicable Me franchise also hit $1 billion worldwide.
I think it was just Illumination in general's first movie to hit $1 billion. It was the highest grossing animated movie that was not a Disney movie.
I think it still is.
The third one is also reaching up there, though, also because it also made $1 billion. But so we start with the Minions. It's a prequel story, even though they kind of break their own continuity that Gru made the Minions in the first film. They don't say it, but it's kind of referenced in the background.
When don't get me started about all the canon problems with these fucking Minions movies, yeah. I swear to God.
No, I don't think Illumination cares. It's just me being pedantic and saying, so they've been around since the dawn of time. Okay, whatever. That breaks continuity.
But and have you noticed which decade they don't even bother to reference during the montage?
So many fucking problems with this plot point. But the 40s. I have so many, like, when I said don't get me started on the issues with canon in these Minions movies, like, I'm going to turn into that person. These Minions movies make no goddamn sense compared to the other 3. None at all. Like, they make no sense if these things have been around since the dawn of time. Like, what? They make no sense if they're trying to find the most evil person, because Gru is not the most evil person in the room. Like, that was the whole point of the first movie. He's just not. So why are they sticking around with him when they see what Vector is doing? Like, that doesn't make any sense either. And then, like, just the knots they have to contort themselves into to avoid things like World War II or I don't even want to say other things because it's in poor taste. Like,
right.
They could make it so that these things did exist from the dawn of time. Maybe Gru made new ones or whatever. It's really they will go to the most evil person they can find that drives me crazy, because it's like, that's not true.
No.
Like, Gru's just kind of a dick. Like, it'd be like if the minions showed up at my house, because sometimes I start being a dick to people. It's like, really?
The opening montage, which, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I will say has the best dark humor among everything.
It is very funny. It is very funny.
I love how they killed a dinosaur because one of them got up while the dinosaur was on a boulder. And then when they met the human, they gave, instead of the human using the club, they give the human a fly swatter to attack a bear. The bear eats him. And then when we get to, they skip a few centuries and such. And then they get to the pyramids, and they just killed a whole society of Egyptians because they placed the pyramid on the wrong side. They throw a bottle, which I don't know how that works, or why they have a bottle all of a sudden.
Or the fly swatter in Cro-Magnon times either. It's just like,
it's just a visual gag. It just shorthand. Yeah. And then it just turns out that they had to like flip the blueprints over at the pyramid, and Kevin just swats, I think it was like either Bob or Stuart. And then they, of course, cut to Napoleon times, where they basically confirmed that they killed Napoleon Bonaparte, not what we actually know of history, which is, the fall of Water, or maybe this was the fall of Waterloo, and it's just an entirely different reaction.
And still in the middle of all of this, we don't know where the minions are, and there's been multiple shitty things happening, which it's like, these are just not questions I want to ask myself in the middle of this G-rated movie. Like, it's just not. I do not want to sit there and be like, hey, I wonder if the minions were involved in the French Revolution at all. Like, right. It just brings up way too many fucking questions about what these minions do. What did they participate in? What were they capable of? What things do we not know about these creatures that we're marketing extensively to small children?
I will say this. For the first 20 minutes, I was kind of vibing with it, because with the exception of a few areas, it's basically like a Triplets of Belleville or the Illusionist style animated feature where there is no talking. I mean, outside of the minionese and such. I thought that was very impressive, because you don't see that with a lot of animated films made in the US. They feel like you have to keep talking. You have to have someone speaking. You have to keep the movie going forward and such. So they have characters talk and act and such. No, it's just Kevin, Stuart, and Bob going out on a journey to help their tribe and making it through the 60s.
I was going to say, I do like the kind of nature documentary conceit that the movie starts with, but it abandons it pretty quickly, which is a shame, because it was pretty funny. Narrating all of this stuff that this horrible, horrible stuff that they're doing.
I think like once they meet the family going to VillainCon, that's when they kind of just say, okay, we're done with the nature doc, let's move on.
Yeah, no, it's a shame. I do like Jeffrey Rush as the narrator. I thought he was great. It's like, this is Stuart. He's hungry. He's going to eat that banana later. And it's very good. They actually had to focus on giving personalities to the minions, because they were all very nebulous, replaceable, like you can swap them out, nothing would be lost. You made Kevin the more adult, responsible one. You made Stuart the kind of adolescent teenage rebel. And then Bob was just like the wide-eyed innocent to the whole world of horror that they were about to embark on. And I do like the family that they meet going to VillainCon, the Nelsons, who are Walter Nelson, voiced by Michael Keaton, Mage Nelson, voiced by Allison Janney, Tina, voiced by Katie Mixon, and Walter Jr., voiced by Michael Beatty. Great side characters. I think Illumination does a good job with side characters from time to time.
I feel like this movie fails its human characters pretty hard, because all the human characters in this movie, the ones that are around as side characters for more than like 5 minutes, are fantastic, and I wish they'd been in a mainline Despicable Me entry.
I agree. You could have like a Despicable Me spin-off film with our villain and her great husband going
husband
going against the Nelsons, and that would be so fun, because they give them good personalities to bounce off of. It took me a second to realize that was Michael Keaton.
I did not pull that until I looked up the cast list, because I was trying to figure it out too.
When they get to VillainCon, I think there's a lot of great little details. First, you do see a younger Dr. Nefario, and you see young Gru with his mom looking at Dr. Nefario's freeze ray. I love when they encounter Professor Flux, who's voiced by Steve Coogan, and how Professor Flux is like, I don't need henchmen or minions because I just go forward in time and get myself from the future. And then they accidentally kill the original and just wipe themselves out of existence. These jokes in this one movie are so dark at times, or a lot more adult. There's also a Mr. and Mrs. Smith reference with the henchman recruitment desks. And then we are introduced to basically the saving grace of this film. Well, one of two. Scarlet Overkill, voiced by Sandra Bullock.
She really is like giving 110% to a role she absolutely does not need to. And it's great.
She is crushing it for a Minions movie for some inexplicable reason.
She is just slaying the entire scene and, well, any line that she delivers. It's so fun to see her have like what sounds like a blast. I love when she's fighting off the people who could be potential henchmen to her. And then she's like, come on, I thought y'all had drive. Y'all couldn't get this bear out of it. Why do I have a bear? Just the quick comedic energy shows that why Sandra Bullock is such a good actress and why she was really good in a lot of comedies. And of course, the minion, Kevin Stewart and Bob, are accepted as the henchmen to Scarlet Overkill. And when we get to her home, we are introduced to Haley. Who are we introduced to?
We are introduced to Herb Overkill, the unfortunately not Tumblr sexy man that should have been a Tumblr sexy man, because holy shit, this guy is great. I love everything about this man so much. Again, I don't understand why these characters are wasted in this terrible movie, but they're here and I love them.
John Hamm plays Herb, and he also sounds like he's just having a blast. This low-key, lo-fi, kind of himbo of a character. I love his interactions with Scarlet, where he's just like, the H is me, not the bird. There's no bird, but bird's also me. And it's just like my can, and it's like, whoa, oh, the painting of the can, the Andy Warhol painting. And it's just like, I just wanted a painting that's symbolize my love for soup. He does have the best lines, or some of the best lines.
I love the scene where he's quote unquote torturing the minions, and it's just like a game to them. Like, this movie has some really dark humor. I think that's kind of like the lowest end of its darkest humor. It's like, these are actual torture devices, and this man genuinely wants to kill these things. But it just kind of turns into this exasperated, like, dad being like, Jesus Christ, why aren't you listening to me? Like, come on, do this. Oh, God, what are you doing now?
It reminded me of a lot of classic Animaniacs gags where, like, the foil is trying to torture the Warner siblings, and they're just having none of it.
I love this man so much. You have no idea.
Well, it's funny that they can get away with a hanging gag because the minions have no necks. So the noose just goes around Kevin's goggles, and that's it. When they find out that like Scarlet wants to be a princess, I don't know why she wants to be a princess. I mean, granted, from like being a kid, and that's like the stereotype girls want to be princesses, not queens. And I love that little stop motion sequence that they do. It's not real stop motion. I think it's CGI that's just, animated on a lower frame rate with different textures and such. I kind of wish they made a movie kind of like that, but I get it. I love the whole antics of trying to get the Queen's crown, who is voiced by Jennifer Saunders, who, Shrek 2 fans will know her as the fairy godmother. And
the best part of the Shrek franchise.
Pretty much. There are a lot of adult jokes between this whole sequence of getting the crown, which is amazing, especially when like our trio of heroes have to get in and they dress up as a woman, and Kevin's eyes are the breasts of the female disguise that they're going for.
I lost my mind. I forgot about that when I was rewatching it, and I completely lost my mind as soon as like the breastplate popped up and I just saw eyes. I was like, oh my God.
This movie has a lot of risque jokes also. It's amazing what they got away with.
This movie does not know what it wants to be, and in some ways it works out great because we get these absolutely ludicrous, risque, dark jokes out of it. But then on the other hand, it's a movie about fucking minions. So it's just all over the place.
I think that's exactly why I love it, because it doesn't really have a structure. It just kind of is.
I think that's kind of my issue with it. It loses its steam by the third act, where right after, like the minions pull out the sword of King Arthur, which I love that even in modern times, they're just like, okay, he's the new king. And then like they until they try to give Scarlet like the crown, and then it's like, Bob, you can't do that. That's against the law. And then Bob just wills it into being by changing the law. And
Bob in the House of Lords was pretty funny too.
Oh, I love that. I love the reporter being like, if I wasn't so polite, I would be screaming right now. Like, he's mortified at the fact that they just gave all of the kingdom and power to a supervillain. But at that point, I was getting a little tired. I was liking jokes here and there. I was getting ready. Like, I guess we'll talk about this when we get through these next two. Like, do they work better as shorts than feature-length heroes? But we'll get to that. I like some of the jokes, like when Kevin goes to save them and he goes into like the experimental chamber and he keeps pushing all the buttons that they say, like, please do not push this button. Do not pull this lever. Absolutely do not pull this one. And then it's just like breath recognition activates and it turns Kevin into a kaiju. And there are some visual gags there, like when he's putting out the fuse that would have killed Bob and Stuart. And just the placement of the fountain. It's just like, I see what you're doing, movie. But yeah, I think at this point, it was kind of starting to overstay its welcome. And I don't know if that's a pacing thing, but it was definitely like, okay, let's just get this through. We know what's going to happen. And then, of course, we see young Gru at the end. And, of course, they think he's the most despicable, but we'll get into the continuity of that because we have to jump forward 2 years into 2017. Not a great year also. This was the year we got the Emoji Movie, Leap, Nut Job 2, Rock Dog, The Star, The Boss Baby, Cars 3, The Smurfs, The Lost Village, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, the movie, the Lego Ninjago movie. I mean, granted, yes, we did get Coco, we got The Breadwinner, Loving Vincent, Mary and the Witch's Flower, In This Corner of the World, the Lego Batman movie, and other amazing indie films like Bird Boy and the Forgotten Children and Napping Princess. But it was also like, there wasn't a whole lot of competition. Like maybe, like I remember when Despicable Me 3 came out, this was around the same time that Captain Underpants came out from DreamWorks. At that point, it was very much like, okay, so we moved back into the future where Gru is now working with Lucy at the Anti-Villain League, and they're trying to stop this film's villain, Balthazar Bratt, who's voiced by the co-creator of South Park, Trey Parker, from stealing a diamond for some reason. And of course, he fails. They lose their jobs. And Gru finds out that he has a secret twin brother, Drew, who's also voiced by Steve Carell, as they try to team up and take down Balthazar Bratt. Sorry. And this is where, for me, as like a pseudo-casual fan of the franchise, I was starting to reach my limit a little with how Illumination writes their movies and such. So let's talk about the new addition to this film, Drew, the twin brother. Question: should they have had a different celebrity voice Drew?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure either. I think Drew should be in this movie, and I don't think it's a plot twist that works in any regard. They're gonna have to do it. They did it in a at least halfway decent way, and Steve Carell is making obvious efforts to differentiate the voices, and they do sound like two separate people, so good on them.
I wish they got a different voice actor. Like maybe go back during the, like I'm pulling like way back when Steve Carell was starting his career in comedy, when he and Stephen Colbert were the voices for the SNL ambiguously gay duo.
And even earlier when they were screaming at each other on The Daily Show all the time.
Right. I like the idea of Drew. It's more that like I like the plot idea that Gru and Drew were separated at birth and they had entirely different growing up experiences. Drew had to deal with not being a good spy or a supervillain compared to their dad. Gru was not a good son compared, all things considered, with his mom, who's voiced by Julie Andrews. And I liked the angle that they were going for with it. But like we've kind of referenced, with this movie, there's way too much going on, and none of the plots get any ample time to actually be fleshed out or become way more interesting than they are.
This is the movie that just feels cluttered with at least 3 to 4 different subplots.
We had the Gru and Drew plot point. We had the overarching plot point of stopping Balthazar Brat. And then we have Lucy Wilde trying to be more of a mother to the 3 girls. And then the 3 girls might as well have not been in the movie. They get so little plot given to them. Margot has to deal with a crush, not even a crush. She accidentally charms a boy at this cheese festival, which I want to say there's something offensive about the festival, but I just can't put my finger on it. It's so nebulous of what the culture they're parodying is that it's just like, oh, I'm overthinking it, I guess. But Edith and Agnes just get like this stupid little subplot of, oh, Agnes hears that there's a unicorn and they encounter a one-horned goat, which I'm going to put money on it. You will not see that goat next time we get to a Despicable Me 4.
Oh, of course not.
It's just like, why have them in the movie at all? You could have taken them out. Like, yes, Gru, his whole arc of just like, he wants to do something so he makes sure his kids are taken care of and that he and Lucy aren't, losing money and such. I'm sure you could have tweaked it to where you could take them out and still have one less plot to deal with. The whole thing with Gru and Drew never really brought up. Lucy's arc of becoming a better mom, or one that where she feels like she's a mom to these kids, happens within like 5 minutes of the entire plot. It's solved like that. Again, deflating the conflict. They don't even go into like the Balthazar Brat arc of just like, hey, maybe they could have had some commentary about how terrible the entertainment industry is to child actors. His whole origin is he hit puberty, got kicked to the curb despite being a star of a fairly popular show, and yet they don't go any further. They just stick with the 80s gags that they give him, and it's so frustrating because Brat is a very entertaining idea and concept of a villain, and Trey Parker knows how to play that bratty man-child who is stuck within the 80s. Or
Sharon.
Clyde, being a villain on TV was fun, but being a villain in real life is even better. Heist music. And then they play that one song, and he's like, Clyde, what the hell? What makes you think this is heist music? And the 80s gags were fun, but after a while, it was just like, that's his only gimmick. Haley, what do you think about this movie?
So I like this movie more than 2. And I'm going to say that I like this movie more than 2 because 2's entire plot structure infuriates me, as we went over. Like, it's so unnecessary. This movie makes logical sense to me as to why it's happening. So I rank it higher. Brad is also my favorite villain in the series, just because I think they finally got to a place where it's like, these are just motherfucking cartoon characters at this point, and we're going to lean into that as hard as humanly possible. And I think getting Parker to do this was kind of genius. Like, I remember reading an interview with him where he's like, people just don't ask me to do stuff. They figure I'm busy. They don't ask me to do children's movies, like, ever. So I think there must have been some sort of mental thing where he's like, oh, I got to crush this. I'm going to do this, and it's going to be amazing. And it was. It's really, the 80s stuff doesn't bother me too much.
No.
But that's because of the thing that does bother me, which is there is like 25 plots going on in this movie, and we don't get a whole lot of focus on ostensibly our main villain. You already covered it. The stuff with Lucy, on its face, good idea. Like, Lucy has never been a mother. She now has 3 children. There's probably some growing pains. But the way that that's executed is by her seemingly forgetting about 2 of those children and getting the 3rd into a nightmare scenario where she's being stalked by someone she doesn't want to date. Maybe we didn't need that plot. Then we've got Drew and Gru, which is supposed to be anchoring this movie, but at the same time, I'm like, we don't need this, though. There's been no foreshadowing of Gru having a brother. Like, it's not necessary. A plot about Lucy and Gru being kicked out of the anti-villain league and having to figure out how to get back in, and just tracking down Brat themselves would have worked just as well and been way more uncluttered. I think part of the reason I'm just like, we don't need this Drew Gru thing is it's like every installment of this franchise adds like 5 more characters. And it's getting to the point where we're like at a Glee scenario where some of these people from the first movie are getting like 1 line. Like Julie Andrews has got like 3 lines in this movie, even though she should be like explaining more about why she gave up only one of her children.
Margot is barely in the movie.
Margot's barely in the movie. I don't think, like, Edith barely talks, Agnes barely talks, even as they are having their own subplot. And like, I think the thing that bothers me most about that subplot is like, it'd be so easy to just bundle them up in Lucy's subplot, but for some reason they decided that wasn't going to happen. And it makes both of their subplots seem really dumb. There's no payoff. And there's no payoff to either of them because both of these plots basically end when Brat kidnaps all of them. The end of this movie actually is fairly effective, and I think it works as a good climax. Like, everything in Hollywood happening, and Gru trying to save his family and all that stuff, and partnering with Drew, who is a complete idiot, but manages to pull it together at the end. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. But, like, we could have gotten here in a much less convoluted way. Like, we really could have. Not against learning more about Gru's family life. I know it's not, but it feels extremely slapdash. It feels like they went, oh shit, we don't know enough about these characters and we're 3 movies in.
Yeah, won't deny that that's what it feels like. And it's a shame because the action is a lot of fun. I love the whole gun duel that when you see Brat and Gru at the first, where he just knocks a gun out of Brat's hand and then Brat pulls out a bigger gun and then he knocks the gun away and Gru pulls out a squirt gun, which a delightful dark joke right there that Gru was basically about to cap him. Mm-hmm. Right there and then. But of course it's a squirt gun.
This is the first movie though where I genuinely is like, why has no one shot this guy? Because he is legitimately murdering people. Like Vector and El Macho, you could kind of be like, oh, well, they seem like they're like located in islands and they're focused on other stuff. This guy is directly destroying like a major metropolitan area, and we have no idea if it's been fully evacuated. Like, what the fuck?
It's impressive, and the animation looks great. They're like, Illumination at this point has hit an area where animation's getting to be on point with everyone else in the big US animation scene.
And this one only cost like $80 million. It looks honestly fantastic.
And the action's a lot of fun. I love the style distinction when Gru and Drew put on the suits with the white and black with the whole spy versus spy gimmick that they pull at the end during the credits. And whatever they did to make the textures on the Brat toys work, they look amazing.
My God.
They're like
horrifying.
They're
so real.
They look like they actually just planted a real toy within the animated film with all that great texture work. And at this point, we were getting like the Lego movies. So we were able to do that, which is a great step in the next evolution of animation. Yeah, I was getting a little tired at this point with Illumination. It's just like, I don't want them to become a Pixar or a Disney or like a second-rate Warner Brothers. I want them to be the best that they can be. And maybe it's just because Chris Meledandri in a recent interview was just like, we don't really listen to feedback, at least on Twitter and such. And it just seems like, so you don't look at the reviews and say, okay, let's do this better then.
I think there's a difference, though, between not listening to a bunch of randos on Twitter and actual legitimate criticism.
Because at this point, they are raking in all the money. These movies are successful as hell, but they are also middling and kind of middle of the road in some regards compared to everything else. And it's becoming a little tiring because every other studio is at least trying their best. Blue Sky would 2 years later put out Spies in Disguise. Well, in 2017, they put out Ferdinand, and Ferdinand's like a really good movie.
Even 2 years before that was the Peanuts movie. And that's still, I think, their best work.
So this is where my frustration is in agreement with everyone else. They're doing the bare minimum, and they're still making all the cash. I mean, we can talk about another time with The Secret Life of Pets and how the second film actually very much underperformed, but still. And now because we are heading into, well, what was going to be 2020 with the 10th anniversary of the Despicable Me franchise before the pandemic delayed this movie to 2022 with the Minions, The Rise of Gru. Okay, so we are now, I guess, in the 70s, even though the movie essentially sets up that it was a year after the Minions discovered Gru. So the timing of everything doesn't make sense to me. How this
Nothing canonically about these Minions spin-offs makes any logical sense.
Nope.
And I'm just going to continue to say that. I'm just like, I know I shouldn't care this much about the canon for a mid-level animated film franchise for children, but this shit drives me crazy.
No, I get it. I absolutely understand. I'm kind of there also. So with this movie, we follow Gru in his early days of dealing with the Minions. We have Kevin, Stuart, and Bob again, and a new Minion named Otto. They want to get into what is it called? They're called the Sinister Six?
The Vicious Six.
The Sinister Six is a comic book thing.
Oh, I see.
I think that's Marvel.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
It is. It's the Spider-Man villain group.
Yes.
So the Vicious Six includes Bell Bottom, voiced by Taraji P. Henson, Wild Knuckle, voiced by Alan Arkin, Jean-Claude, voiced by Jean-Claude Van Damme, Savengeance, voiced by Dolph Lundgren, Stronghold, voiced by Danny Trejo, and Nunchuck, voiced by Lucy Lawless. And then at this point, we find out that the Vicious Six betrayed Wild Knuckles after they got this super powerful Zodiac amulet. And so we have Gru wanting to become a member of the Vicious Six. And then we have a whole misunderstanding of after Gru is actually able to take the Zodiac amulet thing and loses it because of Otto, because Otto fell in love with a pet rock. Okay.
Describing this plot is making it sound even stupider, honestly.
Well, it's like that.
I'm like listening to this going like, I watched this film as an adult.
No, well, then it's like, you see that scene within the trailers and the marketing and in the movie where he's just like, you are not pulling my legs, are you, Otto? Please tell me you have it. And then Otto's just like, yeah, I got this pet rock. And then Gru, rightfully pissed off, you traded my future for a pet rock? At this point, though, something about with Steve Carell as Gru, I get why they brought him back. Part of me kind of wishes that they got someone else to play a younger Gru, even though I get why they brought Carell. I think, though, it's just like his voice is becoming more of the cartoon, like a cartoonier version of the voice than what the original set out to be.
And the original was already pretty cartoonish, but this is just like takes it to like the next level.
That's just one of the few issues besides this film being overstuffed. Second, Gru meets a young Dr. Nefario, who is voiced by Russell Brand. By the way, Dr. Nefario is not in the third movie. I have no idea why. They just kind of kicked him out and didn't want to deal with Russell Brand at that point, I guess.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he was like busy. Was he like, did the schedules conflict? Like, what the hell happened there?
I know, it's humorous. It's like, and Dr. Nefario got himself frozen in carbonite, which I thought was a funny gag, but it's also like something happened there. So one of the big selling points of this movie was the Vicious Six, and they have all these delightful little gimmicks. Like Jean-Claude is still my favorite gag, with him being voiced by Jean-Claude Van Damme, just being a guy with a giant lobster claw. Though if I had to pick a favorite gag, Nunchuck has my favorite ones, especially when how she uses her nunchucks and how she basically gets around when God will just pull her around and levitate her out of the sky.
The nun gags are all pretty solid. The fact that her car has an organ attached to it, a church organ.
That was great. And the fact that she gets hit by a car that was thrown at her by Stronghold and she survives, perfect. But these might be the weakest villains that we've dealt with, because on top of everything of this film being overstuffed, the villains, while having like great designs and gimmicks, are very bland. There's nothing too much to differentiate them from one another. They're just evil. Like Danny Trejo doesn't even get like a full sentence of dialogue. He just gets grunts and maybe says one line, a word here or there angrily. You could have just gotten a voice actor for that.
How dare you waste Danny Trejo like that?
Literally everyone in that group is totally wasted. Like, this movie is very overstuffed, but it feels super egregious to introduce 6 new characters in a franchise that already can't handle the amount of characters it has. Like, it was cool that Julie Andrews actually got more to do in this one. There's too much going on at this point. Like, make a TV show or pare this shit down, because there's too many people to keep track of, too many plot lines you're trying to shove into here, too many things you're trying to retcon or rewrite in a Minions spin-off movie. Like, it's getting absurd.
And there are just a few questionable story decisions that I had to kind of like were rattling on in my head with, like, listen, I love Taraji P. Henson. She slays the performance. I mean, again, like, whatever lines these villains do have, you could tell they put a lot of personality into them. I do have to bring up the question of making the one black villain's whole gimmick disco. And then they do the thing with Michelle Yeoh's character, Master Chow, as the like magical kung fu teacher trope. It's like they wanted more characters and they didn't kind of think through the implications.
Also kind of glaringly noticeable that all of the major villains in these Minions spinoffs are women, and all of the major villains in the Despicable Me franchise are men. Like, I don't know what to say about that, but it's a little strange. Only the Minions can handle women. It's just like, what? Okay, what? These
films don't think through their character arcs or just like what kind of characters there are. They just have colorful villains. Like, what is Vengeance's powers outside of being a really good roller skater? Like, I know he's like a derby character, but man, just don't waste your talent like Dolph Lundgren. He could have been a lot of fun. If you've seen SEAL Team on Netflix, he's a lot of fun in that one. On top of all of this, with the amulet, the small kung fu training sequence, Gru wanting to be taken seriously as a supervillain, we have Wild Knuckles. And a reoccurring theme that's in all of these movies is the found family motif, where Gru finds like kinship with Wild Knuckle. And I really like Alan Arkin in this movie. I think he brings a lot more of the heart and charm to the movie. I like his 3 henchmen, who are actually voiced by voice actors, because you have Jimmy Yang as one of the henchmen, then you have John DiMaggio and Kevin Michael Richardson. I wish they were in the movie a little more, but still, that's just me being like, they got voice actors. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay, bye. I like the action when they introduced Master Chow fighting the henchmen, but still, it's just a lot of this seems like wasted potential, because they could have easily made a movie about Gru like getting rejected from the Vicious Six and then hanging out with Wild Knuckle. I love that Wild Knuckle's form of torture is basically making Gru succumb to like multiple hours of disco.
Well, spinning him around in a circle, notably. Yeah, that would kill you.
That would especially kill you. I mean, granted, yes, the whole like, haha, disco's wild and wacky, isn't it? Which, you know, disco's gone through a huge retrospective look. Then we have Otto. What's everyone's thoughts on Otto?
Otto is cute.
Justice for Dave. Where the fuck is my man, Dave? I was at the point where I was headcanoning that the little chicken was Dave, because I'm like, where's my man Dave? Here to fuck everything up with his rocket launcher. I don't get this.
Was Dave also not in the Minions movie, like the first one?
Dave was not in the first one either. I'm like, fuck is my man Dave? Anyways, Otto is cute. I do like Otto. I like that they gave a Minion personality by making him even too obnoxious for Minions. It feels like it's kind of like some sort of meta commentary from the Illumination side, that they're like, yeah, we know that these guys can get kind of irritating. Here's what really irritating for a Minion looks like. It's just like never shutting up. I liked his separate journey, tracking down the amulet, making a cool friend, and driving all down the coast. My thing with both of these movies is they would have been way better TV shows or sets of short films, because a lot of these movies, it's just moving from set piece to set piece to set piece. It's not like there's like an overarching plot, and this one has a more obvious central plot than the first one. The 15-minute episode where Otto finds the amulet and just sees the sights all along the coast, that's its own little mini episode that worked in like a good time frame. A little 15-minute episode where the Minions are learning kung fu from Master Chow. That's a nice little time frame. I also thought Master Chow was for sure coming back in the final battle, and when she didn't, I was just like, so what was her point then?
She has a great introduction. and how she trains the minions is great. But then she's just dropped from the movie. And I get it. It's like it's meant to be more about the minions, but even at this point, the minions don't have a lot of screen time. That was one of the things about the third movie that was kind of weird and interesting. Like, even though I loved the stuff when the minions were all in prison, the minions were not in the third movie a whole lot. And Kevin, Stewart, and Bob don't really get a whole story arc. Like, you think they would, but they don't. They're just kind of there to fill space.
Like, they definitely have an arc in the first Minions movie. First Minions movie is all over the place, but the whole point is them trying to find the most evil person, which I have major problems with, but at least it's an overarching goal. Like, ostensibly, the goal of them in this movie is to get the amulet back and or get Gru into the Vicious Six. But it's never really clear which one is like their guiding principle. So it's all kind of just mushy. I liked this movie. I liked the second one more than the first one because the second one is just like cathartically stupid on like an existential level where it's just like, this is delightfully idiotic. I am having a great time. None of this makes sense, but it's okay.
Yeah, same.
But it is like a movie, you start thinking about it and it just is like, it just kind of falls apart where you're like, well, why were they there? Why did we waste so much time on that plane sequence? Why are these 5 characters that we're not going to develop even in the most slight way? Like, even the slightest of the villains in the Despicable Me franchise get some sort of explanation for what they're doing or some sort of introspective moment. Like, I don't know anything about Bell Bottom except that she's kind of cool. But like, why are they set up in a record store? Were they all musicians? Like, is she just into that kind of vibe because she's disco but evil? Like, why is Nefario working there? Why did they not do their due diligence and interview a 7-year-old or however the hell Gru is supposed to be at this point? There's a lot of questions that could have been really simply answered if we cut back on any of like the more loony stuff, you know? The loony stuff is good and it's a fun time, and I enjoyed this in the theater because it's a lot of big, bold, eye-popping visuals, and they do a great job with kind of the whole visual and look of it, the palette and the music and all that. It comes together really nicely in a way that Minions 1 doesn't. But it's still a Minions movie, and it has no idea what it's doing. What is the purpose of this? What is the next Minions movie going to be then? Do we move into the 80s and Gru is still inexplicably 10? Like, where do we go from here?
I like some of the gags with this one. I love the teacher gag where one of the kids goes, I want to be a teacher. No, you don't. Just shooting down the dream right there and then.
That got the most solid laugh in my theater. Like, that was the loudest laugh in my theater 5 minutes into this movie.
Yeah. And I liked the plane gag, even though it does maybe go on a little too long. I like the potential heart that there is with Gru and Wild Knuckle. I just wish there was a little more to it instead of just going to the basic story beats of the heartfelt, like, mentor to minion.
Here's a thought. What if instead of the whole Vicious Six thing, Gru just found a mentor in Wild Knuckles and then he just becomes the main villain? Or, I don't know, something to make this less cluttered, but still just as fun and chaotic.
I think if you made just Bell Bottom and Wild Knuckle a pair and Bell Bottom betrayed him, and so we get more information about Bell Bottom, completely get rid of the Vicious Six thing, make them kind of like the Overkills, but then it blows up in their face and Bell Bottom is looking for a new sidekick of some sort. You remove a lot of the chaff that's kind of cluttering up this movie, like this whole organization that doesn't do anything and all that stuff. And it would give you more time to kind of develop Bell Bottom too. I think it's a simple fix, like have Gru be a fan of those two. They've split ways. Gru is like, I need to find out more. Or, ooh, she's looking for sidekicks, or just something simple. And that's how things start spiraling out of control. You know, kind of the same way they do in the movie. Maybe remove the whole amulet thing. I get that they need a reason to all come together, but the amulet was kind of just like a big fat nothing at the end, since it spends most of its time with Otto on the road trip too. You're just like, is anyone going to actually use this thing? Like, what does this thing do? Like,
I liked Otto and his interactions with RZA, who plays the biker. And
oh, really? That was RZA? Oh my God,
Yeah.
I love that. My favorite parts of this movie were that. Like, I really enjoyed just what would it be like to be with a minion for like 15 days?
they could do a Peacock series, kind of like Baymax, with the minions encountering random people.
I would love to see that, or something like the Penguins of Madagascar, where
Yeah.
the like it's episodic, the stakes are relatively low, but you can still have all of the fun antics of the minions.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm getting at when I'm like, these movies feel like they would work way better as television shows. Here we have our like 10 episodes of 15 minutes that tell the story of that time Gru met the Vicious Six. Like, if I'm watching this on TV, I don't particularly care that I don't know a whole lot about Bell Bottom, because this is a children's television show that's showcasing little set pieces each week. In a movie setting, I have to be thinking about this because I'm like, this is all I'm getting right now, and we're about to defeat her. Like, I don't know jack shit about this person.
That's the thing. I love the idea of the climax where they all become like the Zodiac animals, and we are introduced to the anti-villain league. So
it doesn't make any sense.
How does Gru not know about these people by now from the second movie if they're introduced this early and Gru has encountered them?
Well, okay. Also, why hasn't Gru ever mentioned Wild Knuckles before if he was a father figure to him?
No, it's like everyone who had an issue with Lightyear and such, this is like this for me, because it's like I get what Lightyear was going for. It might have not fully worked with the idea, but I still understood it. Here, they're not going to bring up any of these characters, none of these incidences at all in the future.
Yeah, I think the efforts to make this fit in continuity actually made it not work as much for me as like Minions did, because I just completely ignore Minions. They go to the Bank of Evil. First of all, the head of the Anti-Villain League and the guy from the Bank of Evil look exactly the same as they do like 40 years later, which is just like shocking to me. That's not how time works.
The bank owner has better hair.
But that's slightly
better hair, and clearly worked his way up to president of the bank at some point in the 40 years. But like these people should have been like graying then, or something more visual. Like they should have been made more youthful in this movie or something. Like Nefario, they did a good job, but like Nefario is a old man in the main continuity. So,
maybe humans just age slower in this universe.
Maybe. Except for Nefario, and also, like, how old is Gru supposed to be? Like, he's obviously a child. But He was also obviously a child in the mid-60s. And there's a calendar in this movie that says it's 1976. So shouldn't Gru be, like, 20 at this point? Like, in his 20s?
Okay, I'm going to look up to see how long it took. When does Minions take place?
The Rise of Gru does take place in 76. But
there is a calendar on the wall that says 1976 at one point. So I remembered that distinctly. I don't know at what point the Minions is taking place, but it is in the 6th. Despicable Me is taking place in the current time, 2010, which then just like if Gru is 10 in the 70s, he is way too young in the new movies. But like, why didn't they just make a Minion set in the 80s then, because they already had a character they could use to set that tone and have.
By the time we get to like when they meet Scarlet Overkill in the first one, it's 1968.
Gru should be way older.
That's a 6-year difference. So assuming he's like 8 or 9 at the end of Minions, he should be 15 or 16.
They say he's 5.
No, he's not. What the fuck is that?
According to Wikipedia, he's 5.
James, like, no, he looks exactly the same. That's not how aging works either. No, he would look like Agnes in the Minions if he was 5, and then it would look kind of like Edith or Margot in this one. I don't get these fucking movies.
It's like how The Simpsons can't age or anything like that, where they're stuck. Like everyone in The Simpsons is stuck at that one age. They can't do birthdays or anything at that point.
Mm-hmm. But it's even worse than that, because the things they've written themselves into, they easily could have written themselves out of, because they had the current timeline. These Minions movies are period pieces anyways. It's not like The Simpsons where it started in the late 80s, early 90s. So they had to show that Marge and Homer got together in the 70s. And now that reads like Marge and Homer are like 80 years old. But they didn't realize at the time that the show was going to go on forever. There's no excuse in this case because they are retroactively making period piece movies about the history of Gru and the Minions. I sound like a crazy person talking about this.
No,
but
it's wild.
It makes no sense. Like, yeah, he should be like 16 at this point. And if he's 16 in the 70s, that makes him in his late 50s in the current timeline, which also doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
No. He would have to be like in his like late 30s, early 40s, maybe, in the current timeline. So yeah, timing doesn't really add up. And I know they say, we don't care. But it's also like, well, but you're setting up a continuity, so we have to care when all this takes place.
We never saw the anti-villain league or, or Nefario or the Bank of Evil. Like, we never saw any of that. We could maybe excuse it a bit more. But it just, by trying to solve the problem, they made it worse. And I will say they should have made this kind of Minions movie before they made, like, the first one. Like, a Minions movie where we see them interacting with Gru and understanding how they came to, like, grow up together and stuff. That's a solid idea. I can't believe they executed it like this, but,
I get why this film is popular. I don't like the whole young men in suits meme that's going on because some of those screenings turn into chaos, and it's just like, everyone's like, oh, relax, it's harmless. But even though it's like, that's going to be a pain in the butt for those already overworked employees to deal with. And these kids are being just the worst.
Thank God that wasn't the case at my screening. Like, yes, there was a full row above my brother and I of just like a bunch of teenagers / young adults dressed up in suits and hooting and hollering throughout the film. But there were no bananas being thrown. They weren't being like necessarily distracting. They were at least engaging with the movie, which did make my experience more fun.
I went to a screening with a bunch of children in it because it was 11 o'clock in the morning. And there was one kid who kept clapping at the end of every scene, which I know I shouldn't be annoyed by, but it was annoying. No suits, nothing like that. Just a lot of kids who do not have theater etiquette, but they're children. It's fine.
Of course. I went to this movie twice. I went to one Regal Cinemas, and for some reason, the sound was like very muddled at points. So I was just like, what is going on here? It wasn't even like a special screening or anything. When I went to my Alamo to watch it a second time, the sound was way better. What was amusing was the Regal one had a lot more kids and families. And yes, kids with no theater etiquette, but whatever, they're kids. My second screening had a ton of young adults, no suits, mostly people our age. And I just find that so fascinating. It was a full theater also, just a bunch of people in their 20s and 30s sitting down and watching the Minions movie and enjoying it. Like, I'm not saying I hate this movie. And as of right now, it's fine. It's number 18 of the 27 movies I have seen in the animation department. But it's like, I want Illumination to start getting better. Like, do better. Do more with your storytelling. It's like that Roger Corman quote about when he was asked about the Marvel movies, where he's just like, he feels like the spectacle gets in the way of storytelling. I think that's true. I get, like, even without the Despicable Me films, Illumination's weakest part is its storytelling. It was like that with The Grinch. It was like that with The Secret Life of Pets. It's like that with the Sing films. I don't hate this movie. I think it's fine. It's a lot of fun. It's very entertaining for 80 or so minutes. It's becoming a rut.
Here's the question, and I think we even talked about this in our group chat earlier. Like, what exactly does Illumination need to do to be the best at what they are? Because we established earlier, they don't need to be Pixar. They don't need to be Disney. They need to be themselves. What is the best version of that is what I feel like they need to figure out.
Haley, you go first.
So I think generally I'm a little higher on this series than most people, and the rest of the Illumination stuff is just like kind of whatever to me. I think something they should try to do is, like, their strongest suit is the comedy. Like, I laughed at all of these movies. It's hard to get a consistent, like, well, this movie might be not greatly constructed, it might be overstuffed or whatever, but I know I'm gonna laugh really hard at least once. Like, that's not nothing.
Right.
I would love to see them fully lean into like the Looney Tunes-ness that they've been able to develop and perfect with these CG cartoons, the Despicable Me franchise, and just try and make their own Emperor's New Groove. Like, just completely abandon any pretense of trying to tell a coherent story and just make it funny as shit. Like, not set pieces, not like individual things where you're like, there's no real connective tissue here. Like, just a lean 75, 80-minute, fully connected, just all gags on the table, go for it. And see how it goes. Because clearly their storytelling is their problem. And I think most people, their response would be like, okay, they need to tighten it up. I'm like, let's see what happens when they completely forego any attempt at franchise building or whatever and just tell a dumb story with a bunch of gags, mile a minute, and see where it goes. Despicable Me 4 like that would be really entertaining because it's like, we've got too many characters now. So let's just not even pretend to introduce new things. Let's not pretend there's an overarching threat. Let's not do anything. Let's just make it all Gru has to do one simple task and then everything just piles up on top of it and see where it goes.
I would love that.
So like maybe like an anthology film, maybe just like a bunch of short stories connected to make out a longer running time, maybe.
Really what I'm thinking of is the Emperor's New Groove, where it's like there is a story there, but almost nothing in that movie is not completely hammered home by like there's literally like a gag a second. Like, it's all about the humor. That's what they're focusing on. There is a plot you kind of hang stuff on, but it's very thin and there's not a whole lot complicating it. So an anthology film could work in that vein, but I am legit thinking like Emperor's New Groove, where the plot line is maybe something like Drew has stolen Gru's car. Now Gru has to go get his car back. And that's the entire plot. Everything else is just the various ways he's trying to get his car back and everything piling up on top of each other and the characters piling up on top of each other to really bring out and enhance all of this like cartoony kinetic nonsense that they excel at. Part of the problem with these movies is they're so overstuffed and the best parts are just the stupidest things, you know, like the chicken fight in the second movie or the Minions having depressedly singing Christmas carols in the first Minions, or, you know, these moments work really well in isolation, but they're trying to string them together with these increasingly heavy, nonsensical, nonlinear plots. It's like, you don't need that. You really don't need that. Take a one sentence and run and see what you can get.
I think for me, since this is a French studio making the films, I say lean more into the French and European animation sensibilities, because Illumination's going to be making a film with Benjamin Renner, who was the director of like Ernest and Celestine and The Big Bad Fox and Other Tales, because they know how to do like quirky physical comedy. A lot of their films have very charming stuff. Like I said, Ernest and Celestine has really good physical comedy. I agree. I think if I wanted them to enhance their experience, they should just focus on the comedy. They're not great at writing heart, and they're not really interested in it. And that's frustrating, because then you get a film that has a great plot idea and then they don't do anything. And they have all these fun little funny details, like how the three kids' beds are all bombs that may or may not actually be duds, which I thought that was one of my favorite gags from the first one. And like how there's a swing set or something in the second film where they're also made of bombs. Or it might have been a teeter-totter set. But if they are going to focus on a plot, then I really want them to focus on a plot. Actually follow through with your themes and what you want to do. That's really it. Like I said, this isn't the worst movie. Maybe it's the weakest of the big US-made studio animated films. But I've seen Marmaduke. You have to fight hard to be worse than Marmaduke. If you've already seen it, cool, fine, whatever. You're not a bad person. I just wish Illumination would start getting better at what they do. We've seen what happens when studios try to be like Disney without knowing or understanding why this thing worked for Disney or why it worked for Pixar or what have you. Being yourself, which is the most generic family film plot and moral you could have, is what's going to make Illumination grow and evolve.
I'm now really curious to see how Migration turns out, because for all we know, it could be exactly the movie that we all want it to be, in terms of the comedic timing and just more gag focused, less cluttered, all of that stuff. I'm just hoping it is their Peanuts movie or their Into the Spider-Verse, like the one movie that kind of like changes the mind of its detractors.
So let's cap this off with a question. After talking about the 5 movies and just Illumination in general, does Illumination warrant its reputation for being either the worst of the main studios, or do you think like their films warrant their nauseating reputation, or like Haley has pointed out, is it more just the marketing that makes everyone sick and tired of them?
I think it's absolutely the marketing, because people don't like being inundated with the same thing over and over again, especially when it sucks the oxygen out of everything else.
Alrighty. Haley, what do you think?
I think the marketing plays a huge part in their reputation, especially where Minions are concerned. As far as their actual quality, like, it's hard for me to gauge because I haven't seen everything of them, and most of their stuff strikes me as fine, ? Like, but when they suck so bad that I get it. You know, like, I sat through Secret Life of Pets. That's still one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. Like, I left that movie going, I cannot believe people enjoyed this. Like, it was recommended to me, and I walked out going, wow, that was 2 shrill hours I am never getting back. And I get it. Like, I understand that people had that reaction to the Minions movie. Like, if these movies don't hit you right, they're excruciating. And I don't think I can say that for Disney. Like, I just sat here saying I don't like Tangled, but I at least get why people like Tangled. It just doesn't hit me well.
Right.
I've never watched a Disney movie and been, holy shit, that was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. DreamWorks had that period, but it seems like they're out of it now. So I feel like maybe like Illumination's kind of the new punching bag in the same way DreamWorks was a punching bag for a long time.
Right.
And I think the difference is DreamWorks was doing the same kind of smirky, pop culture laden kind of quote unquote hip movie to diminishing returns for a long time until they realized they had to change course. Illumination's not hitting any diminishing returns. People like, for whatever reason, people like the way they do things and are paying money to see them. And so, you know, I don't really know. I think that the Despicable Me franchise doesn't deserve the vitriol it gets, but I understand why the studio as a whole gets the vitriol it gets.
I think that makes perfect sense. A lot of it, I do agree, is about its marketing. They just spam you with marketing and ads and trailers. They do like 3 or 4 trailers, which basically show the entire movie at times. And that's happened a lot with the Minions movie. They showed off way too much. So there's like no excitement going into the theater, because then you're wondering, what mediocre thing are they going to show that I didn't know about? Granted, the Mad Knuckles stuff was not shown off a whole lot in the marketing. I'll give them kudos for that. I think they're just kind of in that spot where they're riding high. They're doing films that are harmless and hit a wide market. But after a while, they're going to need to start changing. Like, this film series doesn't deserve considered the worst thing ever. I think a lot of people in their toxic, hyperbolic vitriol are blowing the reputation of the studio, the many, many talented people that work there, out of the water and out of proportions. But I get the annoyance. But I hope for the best for them. I'm always rooting for studios to improve and such. We saw that with Sony. And they're basically leading the charge for experimentation and trying out different things. DreamWorks has that Puss in Boots film coming out,
which looks amazing.
Yeah.
That trailer was really solid. I'd only seen the teaser before, but they played the full trailer in front of the Minions, and I was like, wow, this is genuinely impressive.
Yeah, so they can get out of this rut. I just want them to do more. And I don't know if it's just you need someone else outside of Chris Meledandri in terms of who greenlights and helps produce these movies.
I think it's also, like, it is important to note that, like, these movies make a ton of money. Like, that's why I brought up the DreamWorks, where it was like they were a punching bag and they had the receipts to show that they couldn't go on this path for much longer. Minions is making money hand over fist in a still COVID impacted environment. Like, I don't think they have much impetus to change unless they decide they want awards, which, they could.
Well, technically, they did get nominated for one Academy Award with Despicable Me 2, but
that's such a strange movie. Well, that was the song.
It was the popularity of the song, because otherwise, a lot of the indie films could have taken up the spot that Despicable Me 2 did. But and yes, sometimes you'll see them pop up, like Sing was nominated for a Golden Globe, but nobody should care about the Golden Globes.
I'm not bringing this up to justify it. I'm just saying it's like we're talking about a thing where people feel this way, but that's not being like in the critical community, but it's not being borne out in the general public. So the perception probably is that there is no issue.
That's kind of thing. The people on film Twitter and such think they're the vocal majority when they're not.
Not even close.
No, that's the thing. Film fans think they're the most important thing in the universe, and they're not. Nobody cares.
I was saying, not getting into that element of things, but even just saying looking from it at a critical perspective and being like, oh, we watched all of these movies and over half of them we found to be terrible. Well, cool. That might not be what's being taken into account here, especially for a studio that right now cannot seem to miss even when they underperform.
No, it's just interesting. I think people need to take a step back. But we have talked about the entire franchise as of right now. So, Mike, do you have a recommendation?
My recommendation, if we're going to stick to movies with a comedic edge, I would just go back to something like Shaun the Sheep, which is a movie with zero dialogue, but still has characters that you care about, a plot that's, relatively simple, and it's still one of the funniest movies that I've seen that year. It's kind of the better example of what the first Minions movie could have been if it was just an entire movie based on the opening montage.
Right.
So if you want to see a good movie with great silent protagonists, definitely check out both Shaun the Sheep movies.
Alrighty. Haley, do you have a recommendation?
So I haven't been watching a whole lot of animation lately, but for an older title, if you're into family bonding titles, or if you're into plot lines about families and how they interact and such, and cute children, Kakushi Goto is the best anime that's come out in the past 10 years. Fantastic show about a man who is desperately trying to hide the fact that he writes an R-rated stupid manga comedy from his 6-year-old. And it's hilarious and fairly insightful about the anime and manga industry. The child in question is the most adorable thing this side of Anya and Spy X Family. And because we've been talking about how overstuffed the Despicable Me franchise is, Kakushi Goto does a really good job of balancing two very distinct plot lines. One of the main one, which I just described, and also the girl, now 18 or 19 years old, going through her old family home and trying to piece together what mysteries her father was hiding from her. It's really well done. It's very emotional. It's very funny. Definitely worth a look. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is we've talked a lot about the problems with Illumination, the things that they do wrong, the things that they kind of do right. But the one time I feel like they fucking fully nailed it was that How Bad Can I Be sequence in the Lorax. And it's worth rewatching it. It is a very good musical number that shows that if they wanted to take on Disney on their own terms, they probably could. But for some reason, they don't want to do that. Also, since we were talking about Tumblr sexy men, might as well bring that up too. But that's a sequence I like revisiting every once in a while because it's really well animated. It's really well vocalized, really well sung, really well tied together. It's the one sequence in that movie that actually feels like it kind of got close to what Dr. Seuss was going for with the Lorax.
Right. I agree. And yeah, Kakushi Goto is great. I'll second that. That's a fantastic show. I think the whole series is on Crunchyroll. I don't know about the movie, but I know they add a little more plot to the overarching story in the movie. Now, I'm going to recommend an anime for this current season, and it's very easy to do so because there's just not a whole lot that's actually really interesting or really good. I'm not going to say anything about Uncle from Another World or The Maid I Hired Recently is Mysterious because they haven't come out as of this point in the US. But I'm going to talk about a show that actually surprised me. Parallel World Pharmacy. At first, I was dreading it because the last time we talked about summer anime, we had that pharmacy drugstore isekai that was mostly harmless, kind of creepy at points, but very much like just kind of Parallel world pharmacy is that concept realized. It's about a doctor in the human world who is very successful. He tests stuff and he has like regret because like his sister died of a disease that he wasn't able to help with, and he wants to find a cure for that disease. He overworks himself to death and is then isekai to this new fantasy world. Granted, he's a 10-year-old kid, but it doesn't go right off the rails to just power fantasy stuff. He's born in a very powerful medical family. They live in a society where it's very much like our society, the whole commentary about who gets the best medicine and, health assistance and insurance and what have you. But then something at the very end of the first episode happens. I'm not going to spoil it, but it kind of impressed me with where it's going because he's not just super perfect. Oh my gosh, I know everything. He has some of the isekai power sets, but he's not like every other boring isekai character like in The Harem in the Labyrinth or Black Summoner, which is just a dreadful isekai, just so boring. But it was one of the few shows, Parallel World Pharmacy, to really just be like, that was actually kind of pleasant. Yeah, that's it, just Parallel World Pharmacy. Definitely recommend giving that one a watch.
Awesome. And this was a fun episode. I'm glad we got to do this. Next week's going to be a busy one. We have a couple new shows to go over, and I guess someone has to talk about Paws of Fury. Until then, Haley, thanks for joining us on this one. Where can everyone not find you?
You just can't. I live in the basement with all the minions. You can't find me. I'm very well disguised. I just look like a minion. Nah, as always, I'm in the Renegade Pop Culture Facebook group. If you have very deep feelings about Tangled, you can yell at me there.
No, don't harass anyone with difference of opinions.
Those musical numbers suck, and I will give a 12-point explanation why if someone comes at me, okay?
You can find me on Twitter at Cam's Eye View. I run my own website called camseyeview.biz where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. That's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/Coach K42. And you can find me in all the various Facebook groups just at my name. You can check out Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. We're also on YouTube. You can find us on Podchaser and the Banana Meter. Listen to all of our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.